Hi, Black Hollywood Live fans. Today we're talking Chris Brown, Bill Cosby again, and did Straight Outta Compton kill Jerry Heller? Stay with us on Justice is Served.
You are tuned into Black Hollywood Lives. Justice is served.
Hello, Justice fans, and thank you for joining us. I have just made it in right under the gun. I said last week that I may or may not be here because of jury duty, and I just barely squeaked in here. I'm not on the panel yet, or no, I'm on the panel, but not the jury yet. They're doing jury selection for a case with serious charges. I'll say that much about right now. So I would be honored to actually be on this jury. But for right now, we're going to talk about legal cases that have already happened. Thank you for joining me. My name is Chelsea Galicia. I am an attorney joined by fellow attorneys Shaka Smith and Yemi Abayomi. Hello, guys.
Hey, what's up?
Hello. This is like the first time where I say hello, and this is like really the first time I've said hello because I just got into this chair. How's everyone doing? I feel like I need to make sure we're all on the same page. They were already quarreling about a story. Can't wait to get to that one. All right, but so let's get started on an update from Chris Brown on that situation where he allegedly pulled a gun on a woman.
Yeah. This one's exciting for me because of all the circumstances around it. So Mark Garagos came out and made a statement. So we know that he was arrested and then he was out on bail, $250,000 bail, I believe.
Yeah, that's quite a bit.
Yeah, so his arraignment is set for September 20th, and then Garagos came out recently and said, he wanted to underlie that there was no gun found in the home.
But wasn't there a gun in the duffel bag that went out the window?
I've been looking for that statement, and there's been no statement as regards to the duffel bag.
So initially when the story broke, we heard something about Chris Brown dropping a duffel bag out the window that presumably had
with at least
weapons.
One gun and weapons and drugs.
And you'll notice from Mark Garagos' statement, he says a gun wasn't found in the house. Yeah.
Spoken like a true attorney.
And
right?
I had questioned whether or not Chris Brown got the advice to throw that stuff out of the duffel bag from Garagos.
I mean maybe. It's possible. Who knows? I mean, Garagos did come up on the scene. I mean, this guy, how many lawyers do you know, show up to the scene of an event?
Well, when you have Chris Brown as a client, I think you're at the ready.
I guess so. I mean, yeah, so he's definitely on speed dial.
So what are the legal implications here? Because I'm trying to think, would it have been advisable? Why would an attorney give that advice? And I'm thinking to myself, so he drops his duffel bag. It's reported that he taunts the police as he's doing that. If they haven't yet obtained a warrant, but they then got the duffel bag and searched through it because of the taunt and, but it was still on the property, does that then
alleviate?
Does that make it illegal?
I mean, maybe they would no longer have grounds to believe that there was a gun in the home. Maybe that was the line of thinking.
Or because they had no search warrant, if they took this bag from the personal property and searched it and opened it, maybe that no longer can come into evidence.
I don't know. I'm sure we'll find out.
But eventually they got the search warrant. So where did that duffel bag?
But if it's already been illegally searched, then that's not going to fly as evidence.
Right, yeah. Right.
We didn't.
But the question is, did they go in there and look at that? Was there a duffel bag to begin with? Did they go in and look at the duffel bag before the warrant?
And we need some more confirmation on it. But it's so bizarre to me that he would drop the duffel bag, then taunt the police. They would search it, and then Garagos would come out with a statement that no gun was found in the home, very specifically.
And not only that no gun was found, but also that the jewelry matching the description was not found.
But again, where is this duffel bag? What was in it?
But so they're trying to say that the girl made up the story so far. She didn't even exaggerate. She made it up about jewelry that wasn't even there.
Completely.
He said that there was a text message that she sent that said, "Chris Brown, this freak, Chris Brown just kicked me out of his house.
I'm going to set him up.
I'm going to set him up.
Yeah.
And he'll wish he never did this." Something to that effect.
And they're trying to authenticate that text, but it's still very weird. It just rings very weird so far.
But it's exciting to you.
Oh, absolutely. This is theater, right? This is theater.
Real life. As long as it's not your life, then it's entertaining when it's somebody else's.
I'll be glad for him if this in this instance he actually is not as crazy as we think he is.
Why?
it's too much.
You're rooting for him on this one.
I am. It's
I just want to know about the duffel bag. I want to know that it exists and that, you know.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, Mark Garagos is taking, like, advocating for your client to, like, another degree when he, like, shows up. And then also this, you know, wasn't done for any other reason. The statement wasn't done for anything other than the court of public opinion.
Yeah.
He didn't have to say any of this stuff legally to defend his client. So, I mean, I guess Chris Brown, you think, cares more about what the public thinks than waiting until these facts come out
Certainly,
in the court system?
What the public believes is going to, I think, can have the ability to sway your case. Obviously, if a jury's involved, it will certainly, you know.
Or do you think that if people believe that he, you know, had a gun, that they're less likely to do business with him between now and then?
Yeah, that as well. Yeah, I'm sure it'll probably shy away some, you know, potential.
I don't think so. I feel like he's
much money
done
to
a
be
lot
made.
of. Yeah, he's a talented guy. He makes a ton of money. He's a walking business.
But if these charges are taken seriously, and as in he did this thing and it's just a matter of time, then I think companies will shy away from working with him.
I mean, because let's not forget,
he might go to jail.
Wasn't he the one performing the night before the VMAs a couple years ago where Suge was shot at the club here on Sunset?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if enough people that
you're
around doing business with associate you with guns and problems with guns, they don't want you showing up to their events. And
if they believe the likelihood of a conviction is high here, then obviously they're going to shy away from working with him, unless they believe it's a story made up, and then they won't believe he'll be convicted.
Oh, man.
I just think that money talks. At the end of the day, I just think that money talks.
But people are. Suge is now suing the club and probably the promoters and people that were associated with the event that happened at One Oak.
Yeah.
So you know, there's money to be made, but there's also money to be lost if you're dealing with somebody who is a liability.
If he's formally charged and it looks as though the evidence is skewing that he might go to jail, then I think you'll see people start to drop off in terms of sponsorships and collaborations.
Yeah, I don't know, but my hunch on this one is that this girl, there's something up with this girl and the story.
Everything is crazy.
The moment it came out that she was wanted in New York in connection with a robbery,
which is also an old robbery. Was it 2013?
3 years ago. It was 3 years ago. She's been wanted in another state. To me, that already brought her credibility level down.
Right, I'm on the same page.
And what I don't understand is why, when the police got to the home, Chris didn't immediately present himself, because they wouldn't have. If the police believe this woman's lying at the time,
I'm sure he called up Mark Garagos. Mark Garagos was in court and was like, "Don't move a freaking muscle until I get there."
Because if you'd allowed the police to make their own assessment, they may have come to the decision that you shouldn't be arrested because the story sounds like it's been made up. You know, if you had cooperated with them fully.
Oh, I don't know if they do credibility checks on the girl before they go in to a house that perhaps has a gun.
Well, I don't know if they. I would think they might.
I would just play it safe. Play it safe. Don't do anything. Don't say anything. Just wait. Just wait.
If it came,
I'm sure he didn't say go. You know, create a video about how whack the police are. That was not in the recommendations.
I just wonder if they knocked on the door or if there was.
I'm sure they did.
So I would think
they said that they did, and he didn't answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I would just come down and say, well, "What's going on here?" I think that's what someone who's not guilty does.
Well, but that was something interesting that the judge in the case that I am a potential juror on, they said, the way that you think you would respond if somebody has charged you with a crime or thinking that you've done something, the way you think you'd come out and defend yourself isn't the way that most people or some people react.
Yeah, of course.
Because there are things that you're not contemplating right now. And probably, maybe he has tried that at some point and it didn't work out well for him, or he knows somebody that tried that and it didn't work out well for him.
Yeah,
so
his previous experiences with trouble in the law.
Yeah, I don't know. Some reason tells me.
I mean, a lot of us think that, if somebody accuses us of something that we didn't do, we're going to jump to our own defense and come out and say exactly what happened and why we didn't do anything wrong. But that actually doesn't turn out to be the case.
It's certainly not always an indicator of guilt.
And if you're a jury, it's not an indicator of guilt.
Yeah.
All right. All right, so we're getting a sneak peek into the plan of prosecutors in the Cosby case based on a motion that they have made asking the judge to allow some interesting witnesses to participate. The prosecutor wants in the Philadelphia criminal case against Cosby for the sexual assault of Andrea Constant to bring in other accusers.
Of course.
And this is a pretty controversial thing to do. It seems like a pretty logical thing that the prosecutors would want to do, but there's a lot of reasons to keep that evidence out So you're the defense attorney. What are you offering as a reason why they should not be allowed in?
Well, usually in a criminal case, it's not always the case that you'll have people offering evidence of maybe prior crimes to use to prove a current crime, and the idea is that you don't want to taint the jury to think that, oh, well, he did it once before.
Right. Didn't we all spend like a semester in law school on just this exactly?
But we did have an exception, and that would be modus operandi. So if we have a specific way that someone does a particular crime, then we can bring in evidence of that.
Right.
And so we know that he's been rumored to provide quaaludes or things that might erase your memory. And
right. So if this was just evidence that he's just like not a good person in general, or he's mean to women, or he's disrespectful to women, that would not be allowed in as like bad behavior. But to show a consistent pattern of doing things a certain way that likely happened to this woman is allowed, unless the judge believes that the
circumstances are so different that But it looks like after.
What's the term? Man, it's been a long time.
Modus operandi.
No, that when the judge
the
can
interest
still.
of justice outweighs
Probative versus prejudicial.
Yes, thank you. So, thank you. That's the word I was looking
There we
for.
go.
That
Good.
even if it sounds like, okay, this might come under the exception that the judge can still think that it's too prejudicial, too damaging to Cosby to be fair to allow any of these witnesses. Or maybe she'll allow, he or she, I can't remember if the judge is a man or a woman, will allow some, but not all of them.
Yeah.
All right. What do you think? I think that some of them are going to be allowed to.
Yeah,
the ones that are
13,
very close to the story, but they're going to have to be very close.
And I'm
to
guessing
the
the 13 have been vetted and they are already close enough to the story. I'm sure that's why they picked these 13 because they had a large pool to pick from.
They had a large pool
You
to pick from.
took the word
You
vetted.
probably don't even need 13 to begin with. I mean, just a handful.
But with fame and money, you just you got to swing for the fences.
Yeah. All right. Well, are you looking for a career in tech? Maybe business, data, design, or marketing? Trying to get that promotion or raise? To excel in your career, you need 21st century training and skills. General Assembly is the largest and most respected school worldwide for people seeking to grow their talents and master the marketplace. Whether it's learning remotely, online, or in person at one of their beautiful campuses, you can join the 350,000 people who've already gotten the training needed to propel careers in tech and business. More than 2,500 companies worldwide hire GA's graduates, with 99% of graduates who participate in GA's career services landing a new role in field within 6 months of starting their job search. I'm thinking if ITT Tech had done that, maybe they would still be in business, right? Take control of your talent and career now. Find out more at ga.co/geek. That's ga.co/geek. And enter the promo code GEEK, spelled G-E-E-K. Hopefully by now you know, because we've been saying that so many times, right? To save on your first class, workshop, or event. Once again, that's ga.co/geek, code word geek. Thank you so much, General Assembly. All right, so now a twist in the Straight Outta Compton case. We have talked about how Jerry Heller had filed a case against everybody, basically revolving around the movie for the way that he was portrayed. Mm-hmm. And then just days ago, he died. He was 75 years old, apparently had a heart attack while he was driving, and they're not sure if he died from the heart attack or crashing his minivan. Who knew that he drove a minivan, right? And the injuries from that. Be that as it may, he is no longer with us. So the first question is, because this is a fun, teachable moment, what happens to the claim that he had brought against the movie?
That was my first question when I read about this. Does this mean the end of the case? Because
the estate continues, yeah.
Well, so he sued for defamation,
Exactly.
and usually you can't defame a dead person. They have no
damages are to compensate for the business that you have lost, right? That's how compensation is.
And the harm to your reputation
is measured in damages. And what estate? I mean, he's survived by like a brother and a nephew. So there isn't somebody who was
someone will take the estate, the brother or the nephew.
Sure, but I don't think the estate has any leg to stand on in continuing this claim that the estate was harmed by.
Well, because where the personal likeness claims, that those were dismissed.
So.
Gosh, maybe we should watch our own show before we cover
No.
because we talked about how the judge had dismissed several
Some
of the
claims,
lines.
but he
Yeah.
allowed certain ones to continue
proceed,
on.
yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think the defamation
Continued with regards to not giving advice to NWA or
To not see
find
an
a lawyer.
attorney.
Exactly.
Okay,
And-
now it's all coming back to me.
and also potentially
Cube, yeah.
a copyright infringement claim, I think, as
Against
well.
his book.
It could
Well,
maybe.
I remember they used the 2 scenes and said that could go forward, but I wasn't clear on if the publicity rights, because he said they used his his likeness. It was portrayed by Paul Giamatti, so that claim would still be survivable with the estate.
But the estate has to put up the money to continue this case. So
Well, if Shapiro has a sizable estate, and if Jerry Heller's got a sizable estate.
And apparently he was so adamant about these claims that he said, regardless of what happens to me, I want you to continue through with these claims. And under California law, if a plaintiff dies while in the pursuit of litigation, your claim survives. So even though you can't defame a dead person, since he's already started the process or made the claim and started the action, that defamation claim isn't affected by the fact that he's passed away.
So in other words, if this movie came out right now, there would be no claim because he's gone already.
Right.
All right. So the other interesting thing is that there are people saying that it was the stress of the movie that killed him. Is that a new claim?
Well, we know Shapiro used a very
Heller,
particular
you
language. No, Mickey Shapiro, when he said, if not for that movie, he used that really nice but-for cause we like in the law. So I don't know if there might be claims of wrongful death that may arise.
Freaking right. I mean, he had pre-existing conditions. Heart issues, diabetes. He was 75 years old.
Right.
It's a tenuous connection that the stress from this caused that. Then that would be quite the obstacle to overcome to show that there was really a connection that he would not be dead right now if not for the movie.
I think that's right. So I don't see the wrongful death claim, but in
like
terms
the long
of his,
shot of me becoming a rapper, that's about as good of a chance that he has.
I don't see that, but yeah, definitely in terms of the defamation, in terms of the rights of publicity, copyright infringement, those can continue on definitely.
Alrighty, although I kind of think that they're going to die with him, but we'll find out. All right, so the Supreme Court denies North Carolina the opportunity to appeal the voter ID laws. What is this about?
Well, yeah, this one's incredible. So
We've got interesting, incredible. All right, Shaka, tell us.
Because as I did my research on it, I dug into the reasons they made these voter ID laws, and I was surprised by
What do you mean you were surprised?
I was
how blatantly racist they were. I mean, normally people tend to do things a little bit more undercover these days.
They try and pretend that they're not?
Yeah, but what essentially happened is they made these voter ID laws. They requested data on how minorities were voting in past elections in North Carolina. And they found certain things like in early voting, black people were voting very high in the first 17 days, and they voted particularly high on Sunday. So then they made one of the voter regulations to get rid of a week of early voting and knock out one of the Sundays. They had these regulations that were aimed.
It's crazy that this is still happening in 2016. It's embarrassing,
Even
actually.
with they started requiring photo ID, but you couldn't use a government employee ID or an ID that you might get from social services because that would knock out a high percentage of minorities.
But they allowed people with passports, for example, of course. That
Which
was a
are
valid
expensive
ID.
to obtain.
Exactly.
Yeah. And even if it was expired driver's license, you couldn't use that one. So they knocked out a lot of forms of ID and different things that they thought were associated with a high minority turnout. And the Fourth Circuit saw this, and they said this cannot stand.
This is not constitutional.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because your first judge said, you know what? The effect was not a racist effect.
Right, because this applied universally to everybody.
Yeah, and he said he found that more minorities actually voted after these laws went into place. But then the Fourth Circuit came down and said, you know what? He missed the forest for the trees. He didn't look at the intent, and certainly there was discriminatory intent here. And the Supreme Court said, you know what? They're deadlocked 4-4. So, I mean, how are they deadlocked on this issue? But.
So wait,
we can imagine why they're just deadlocked on this issue, and only imagine if Scalia were still alive,
Yeah.
There would be no. We know how this would have come out if Scalia was still alive on this issue.
Wait, hold on. They denied to hear it, or they denied, or they just
They deadlocked.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you're in jury duty all day. That criminal courts building downtown is like a cave. I had no internet access at all. So some of my knowledge on some of these stories is kind of skim. But they actually heard this case. So this isn't one where they denied the appeal to even hear it. They did hear this, and then they concluded 4-4 that they don't know. So what that means is that what the lower court said stays, and what the lower court said was, this is not going to fly.
Yeah, they can still appeal the lower court's decision.
All right, but man, I know this is. I mean, it's just embarrassing that this is kind of the state of America in 2016. But the least that we can do is all know about this, so that we can have a say when it comes to voting, which is coming up pretty soon. All right, now talking about another ballsy move. Let's talk about Subway guy Jared Fogle. He's the guy who is currently in prison for what's like 15 years.
16, over 15, closer to 16.
Right, for child pornography.
And I think crossing state lines to have sex with minors.
Yes. So he was sued by one of his victims, actually several of the victims, but this story that we're talking about today stems from one particular victim whose name we don't know. She's Jane Doe. She was in her pictures, her nude pictures were, at issue in this case. And so she and her parents are suing for emotional distress. And Jared Fogle and his attorneys had an interesting response, which was?
So instead of just sucking up with his wrongdoing and going quietly into the good night, he's decided to countersue and say that it wasn't him that inflicted this emotional distress. It was the parents' fault, that because of their messy divorce and their physical abuse of one another and the alcoholism, that this girl was suffering mental distress or emotional distress well before he even entered the picture. So never mind that they were that she was videotaped changing or in the bathroom. Forget about all that.
Shaka, where are you on this?
On the fact that her parents have had marital issues.
Well, I mean, I condone none of it.
Or this is a different fiddle than you were, squeaking along when I walked in here.
But I know I do support someone's legal right to defend themselves and say, look, you were already messed up before I met you, so this is not contributing to your state of affairs. So
what was strange to me was how would he know that this girl was messed up before? Not that I even accept this claim. Let me just start with that. But how would he even know that this girl was messed up prior?
I have no idea. I mean, I don't know if he's got investigators or whatever it is, but you have a legal right to defend yourself. And so pushing back against that claim that...
Yeah, the legal defense was, I didn't do it, but we already know that he did.
Yeah.
But he might think...
Is there a right to file frivolous claims?
Not if someone is legitimately suffering from sort of mental condition before you encounter them, it's not fair for them to blame you for it and come after you for whatever, monetary.
So do you think that, let's just say that first of all, then that would mean that any person can sue their parents for getting a divorce because they're emotionally distressed from that. You think we should all start doing that?
If you can somehow, look,
I mean, just the number of people who have gone through a parent's messy divorce, and then that by itself makes you emotionally distressed so much so that when an adult takes pictures of you and trades them around with buddies, that's not going to have any impact on your mental state.
Let me say, I didn't read the details, so I don't know if he has alleged certain other details that might speak more to his case.
I don't think he has. I think he said the parents are alcoholics. They fought physically in front of each other. They had a messy divorce, and because of that, she was so upset
before I found
and
her.
had suicidal ideations and things like that ahead of time.
If she was committed most of her life prior to meeting him and was in and out of institution, I mean, he has a case there. I just don't know what the details are.
Actually, that could haunt him the other way, because let's just say she was vulnerable because she had these circumstances in life, and then something he can try and be like, well, it's only a couple pictures. I mean, it shouldn't have been that big of a deal. But if she was already vulnerable and this situation triggered something and her reaction was sort of seems out of proportion, he's responsible for it all. Let's remember, eggshell. You deal with the plaintiff.
And I think that's the more likely reading of how it would go.
But I think he also has the right to say, look, if these behaviors she was alleging that she did after this encounter, she was doing before this encounter. So how is it if he's saying that this pattern of behavior that she's alleging came from what took place, but she was already doing these things?
This is kind of like, the case where, if you rear end somebody and they're claiming neck pain and you go into their medical records and find out that they already had a neck injury, you don't want to have to pay for all of the neck injury. You want to pay for the part that you caused.
Yeah, and so I don't think it's wrong in terms of exercising your legal rights to say, look, these things that you're saying happened after you were already doing before. You were suffering from these conditions prior to.
But to try and, alleviate all liability for it is ridiculous. I mean, to say that people are messed up from a divorce so much so that this kind of thing wouldn't have any bearing on them.
He also said that alcoholism, and so I don't know what else took place in that household that he might know.
How many people are, children of alcoholics who, are operating and functioning just fine. I mean, it's kind of insulting to people that have gone through similar situations.
I think it's him grasping at straws, to try to say that one had more impact. At the end of the day, you videotaping these girls and subjecting them to that, I think is enough to say you were at fault.
Well, you're definitely at fault. I mean, I'm not saying you
I don't know how much you can qualify it by saying you had a messy divorce, and maybe it did. Maybe you were kind of unstable.
But that's why
if you did it, just freaking pay for it.
It's the moral thing.
Wait, but that's why we have the civil system. The criminal system is different. He's liable. He's criminally liable. But when it comes to the civil system, we have it so we can assess how much you did contribute to someone's. That's what it's there for, is to determine how much you contribute.
I mean, it is true. This is contributory, not negligence, but cause. Usually we hear about it as contributory negligence, but comparatively, who has the responsibility?
That's what the whole civil system is there to conclude. So I think he's well within his rights to say, look, I didn't contribute to all of this.
And I think, given what he's been convicted of, he doesn't have a lot to lose in terms of reputation. It doesn't even him going after the parents. He doesn't have anything more to lose.
If part of someone's civil suit is saying they can no longer go to work, but they weren't working for the last 10 years because they were messed up by their alcoholic parents, and hey, I'm not the reason you're not working.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess it's bizarre for us to expect him to do the right moral thing in this situation
when clearly his moral compass is
a little off.
Well,
it's headed south.
You don't know.
Well, I mean, this is not moral justice is served, so maybe we shouldn't have to press Shaka too much on this.
I just don't know if the right thing to do is to say, oh, I'll pay whatever claim you bring at me because I've done some act of wrongdoing. While you should pay, I don't think it means that you need to bankrupt yourself to do so. So him deciding to defend himself and say, I didn't contribute this much because I'd like to provide for this part of my family, and I have money that I'd like to give to other people. I don't think it means you necessarily cede your possessions.
I respect your attempts to defend him, and I understand. I mean, I understand what you're saying. I think you're still wrong, but I understand it, and I totally respect it, and I appreciate the perspective because it's probably you, Jared, and his attorney are the only one. Habit.
I don't know.
But it's a skill to be able to see things from that perspective. All right, so this last story, I mean, did we get through this already?
Actually, the Supreme Court...
Did we skip something?
The North Carolina one, I think they declined to hear the appeal, right?
That's what I thought, and that's what I was a little confused about.
I think I
thought they heard it. No? I don't know. I could be mistaken.
I think that they said no to the emergency appeal. I think they were 4-4 on accepting the emergency appeal.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so they
So that's why they can still appeal from the Fourth Circuit's decision, but just not to the Supreme
Okay,
Court.
thanks for catching that. Otherwise, we would get mean, terrible incompetency comments. Hey, I mean, we cannot be on top of each and every single fact the way that I would like to if I had nothing else going on with my life. But, that's just not the case. All right, so this last story is a cautionary tale for a lot of us who, I don't know, like to make jokes on social media or, I don't know, body shame people because it might come back to bite you. I'm not sure if you guys remember the story of the Playboy
Playmate, yeah.
Model, and she took a not so nice picture
Yeah.
of an elderly lady, like she was in her
70s.
70s, yeah.
and so it's like it's her in the picture and then the woman showering
Yeah, naked.
in the gym locker room. And the caption on it was, "If I can't unsee this, then neither can you."
Yeah.
Clearly shaming the woman for her body. Okay, well, now, wouldn't you know, they have found the woman in the picture. Because they have found this woman, she now has the opportunity to press charges.
And she has said she wants to, so.
Wow. So the woman did come out and apologize for it. What was it? Danny Mathers has apologized for it.
Except the apology was, I didn't mean to send it to everyone on Snapchat. I just meant to send it to one friend.
I know that. I know that. Yeah, that's. Okay. But if I guess as the victim wants to press charges, what would be the charge and what is the possible exposure for Danny Mathers if convicted of this, sending this private image out to the public?
Yeah, so there's, I guess, two issues. There's one, the woman's case, a civil matter in terms of the invasion of her privacy. In the locker room or in a bathroom or in my bedroom, I have a reasonable expectation of privacy. I don't expect that there are people videotaping me and taking pictures. So that's one side of it. But also, in addition, in California, it's illegal to videotape someone in a private room, whether it's a tanning booth, a bathroom, a bedroom. Again, any place where there's a reasonable expectation of privacy, it's against the law to videotape them without their knowledge or their consent. So there's a criminal matter there as well. It would be a misdemeanor, but she has to look at it from both sides.
Would she face jail time, Shaka?
Yeah, I mean, was it up to 6 months in jail?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and I think probably well-deserved,
so.
and I think it's a good lesson for people, because I think it happens a lot more than we think it does.
I think, though, the chances that she'll see the inside of a jail because of this are very, no pun intended, slim.
I think they could, I think they really
think
could
so?
make an example
out
of
of
her.
her?
Yeah, because 6 months is not really a ton of time. They might give her 2 or 3, and she might be out early release.
More like 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, can we remember how many times like celebrities been convicted of a DUI?
And overcrowding, and boom, they're out.
In like 2 hours? That might happen here. Okay, so yeah, be careful with those
Snapchats and
attempts at humor. All right, speaking of attempts at humor coming to an end, I should probably cut this before my deliriousness takes over. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Justice is Served, and make sure you tune back in with us next week. In the meantime, you can comment, on the YouTube comments or to us. I am on Instagram and Twitter at Chelsea Galicia.
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat at Shaka Strong.
And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Yemi.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
From executives Keven Undergaro, Dario Kristen, Tiana Hobson, and the entire BHL staff, we would like to thank you for supporting Black Hollywood Live, the first online broadcast network dedicated to African American entertainment. For questions and comments, contact us. info@blackhollywoodlive.com. Like us on Facebook, tweet us, or Instagram us at BHL Online. And I am the official voice of Black Hollywood Live, Scipio. Instagram me at KingXOBay. Thanks for tuning in.
Hollywood redefined.
The views expressed here are those of the host only and do not necessarily reflect the views of BHL or its owners or principals.